Ask any young Lebanese what they think about their government, their politicians, or the system in place, and you most certainly will get a roll of the eyes in response. However, there are a few political officials that are working to change the country for the better, and they believe that despite all odds, Lebanon has a good future ahead. Elias Bou Saab's career started far away from politics. He co-founded the American University of Dubai in 1995. He put in place a scholarship program enabling American students to study in the Middle East, bearing the name of US President Bill Clinton, who in turn recognized Bou Saab's efforts in promoting intercultural understanding between the Middle East and the West.
My educator friend from Lebanon and Dubai, who used to be at the American University in Dubai, Elias Bou Saab there, he made the right decision to be part of a great university in the Middle East. He made the right decision to be loyal to his native Lebanon, the only place in the Middle East that has a constitution that mandates inclusion.
Appointed education minister in 2014, he liaised with UNICEF, the World Bank, and USAID, to name a few, and together they helped alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Lebanon. We met the newly elected official to hear his thoughts on the current situation in Lebanon amid rising tensions in times of economic woes and political uncertainty. I know you are a member of the Clinton Global Initiative, and you played a very important role in establishing scholarship programs to give American students a chance to come and study in the Middle East. Why was that important to you, to get Americans to come to the Middle East?
It's important for me to try and give as many scholarships to students as I can, because I understand the importance of that. I had to suffer to get my education in London. I'm somebody who left Lebanon, went there at the time when the economy was so bad. I left in 1987.
Yeah,
but at the time, the Lebanese currency dropped during the civil war, and my father did not have all the means to pay in hard currency, as they say, it's sterling or dollars at the time, the tuition and all the expenses. And I told him, if you get me enough money to get to London and try and pay my first semester, I will work to continue. And that's what happened. I went there, I started working, I worked in McDonald's, I worked as a waiter, and then I worked in exchange, foreign exchange.
I once heard everybody has to try waitressing once in their life. Do you agree with that? Somebody once said that, and I said, really?
I believe so, because it gives a different experience, and you'll understand,
You appreciate the other things more when you do that.
I mean, I remember how happy I was when I got my first tip.
Nobody gets a tip in McDonald's. What did you do?
I know. I was in charge of the floor. Basically, I was cleaning, mopping the floor, and there was this old lady who, opened a conversation with me about where you're from, and then she left me 50 pence. And I was so happy that, someone tipped me 50 pence. And after that, I had to work to pay all my tuition. And that's what pushed me to try and give scholarships and appreciate what it means for someone to get higher education, especially if they can't afford it. Also at the time, the tension was very high between the East and the West. It was after 9/11, and people were, assuming every Arab is a terrorist, every Muslim is a terrorist. So I spoke to President Clinton about this program, and I said, why don't we try and create this bridge where we give scholarships for students. They will carry the name, the Clinton Scholars, and they will come from all universities, any university in the United States, study in Dubai for one semester, full scholarship, and then they go back. Yes. One, they get to learn about our culture, the bonding between them and students from this region.
And they'll see we're not terrorists.
Exactly.
Right.
And when they go back, they become like ambassadors for the Arab world in their own universities.
You became a Minister of Education during a very difficult time because the Syrian refugee crisis had spilled over quite a bit in 2014. And I did not know this, but you were a child refugee yourself.
Correct. During the Israeli invasion in 1982 on Lebanon, we had to flee our villages and we went to Syria. And I stayed in Syria as a refugee from Lebanon for 1 year. So I stayed out of school for 1 year. And when I came back later to Lebanon, my friends were 1 year ahead of me. So I stayed 1 year out of school, and I know what it means for a child to stay.
And you remember that? That bothered you?
Of course.
Yeah.
And that's why when I became Minister of Education here, it was the highest crisis of refugees in any one country, given our size and the size of the refugees. I made sure that we will give every child an opportunity to go to school. And I created this program, and I got a lot of help. About 300,000 students, Syrian refugees, are in schools in Lebanon right now. We had to create a program where we use the schools on double shift basis.
Yes, I know you
So
did
we
that.
use the same facilities in the afternoon to save money, of course, but we had to pay the salaries of the teachers that we were hiring in the afternoon.
As a former member of the board of directors of the Young Arab Leaders, what is your reaction when you hear that the Lebanese youth feels disillusioned about opportunities in this country, and they blame the Syrian refugee crisis as one of the reasons behind these increasing problems?
Well, first of all, I would like to communicate more with the youth, especially in Lebanon. And I would like to show them a different path and show them that there will be hope if you search for it. Blaming the refugees crisis is not 100% accurate. It affected our economy, of course, and it is taking on a lot of jobs. But those jobs that are taken by the Syrian refugees are not the jobs that a graduate from a university in Lebanon would apply for or would take. So the crisis is affecting our economy, and we should deal with that. But at the same time, we have a lot of decisions to be made in Lebanon at the government level. A lot of measures must be taken to really create jobs and create opportunities for students or fresh graduates from universities, so they don't lose hope in their country.
They say, the young people say there are no jobs, very inadequate salaries for rising costs of living. Most of them want to leave this country because they believe there are better opportunities abroad, rightfully so. So how do we stay optimistic when you have a small elite that is self-sufficient, but thousands of young people that cannot find wages for a decent quality of life? We're not even saying great, we're saying decent. How do we stay optimistic?
I'll tell you how you can stay optimistic. Now, Lebanon, what we have today that we didn't have in the past, we have gas, we have opportunities.
Yes, but
we have oil. So nobody is going to come and put pressure on Lebanon economically to tell you, you are going in the wrong direction. That is the guarantee that we have now that we didn't have before. If we take that into consideration, we should start building our economy based on that. Based on trust, based on guarantees that
you
we
mentioned trust, and you mentioned the government, and you mentioned that there is all this wealth that can come from drilling and the oil and gas industry. But what you omit is that the young people today are very disillusioned with the political system as well, and they don't trust the government, they don't trust the politicians. They believe they are corrupt. They believe they will take it and put it in their own pockets. So how do you build trust when there is no trust to start with?
Okay. The way to move forward in that is to start electing people that looks like you, especially the young generation. That was not possible in the old electoral law. Now, this year, for the first time,
in the elections,
we held elections with a new law. That law is the right law to put us on the right track moving forward. We are not where we want to be in terms of reforms, fighting corruption, having the people represent you, that you trust that they will be doing the best for the country and not stealing money or being corrupt or what have you. For us to move forward, we need to elect the right people. To elect the right people, you should have a law that will allow you to have your say.
Many people still criticize this law, though, saying that it still favors the political elite as opposed to allow people to elect because of the lists and how you actually go about electing candidates. Not a lot has changed, really.
I don't think this is the ideal law that we would like to have.
Okay.
But it's a lot better than what we used to have before. And it allowed us to start getting surprises in the elections, which is the right thing to see. It gives hope for people to say, we don't belong to this group, yet we became members of the parliament. And we have cases like that in this current law. This will lead us to make changes to this law moving forward in the future and go in the right direction. This is like we had an empty glass of water. Right now, we see that there's 10% full. We should not only look at the
We should keep
90%
going.
that's empty. We should look at the 10% and see how we can fill it more. We are in this
You
direction.
believe we're on the right track. You know, there was a piece published in The Economist recently titled, "Lebanon's economy has been sluggish, but now a crisis looms. And the country's politicians are busy haggling over cabinet posts." I know you've openly defended President Michel Aoun's remarks on the cabinet formation, but people still fear that that won't happen soon. And the repercussions of having no government could be catastrophic for an already pretty fragile country. I know this is not the first time in Lebanon, you know, that something like this happens. But why is this time different now that people are actually turning an eye and saying, you know, we need to get a cabinet formed very soon?
Right. Basically, this is normal according to the norms in Lebanon.
In Lebanon, okay.
But why it's different this time is because people are speaking out more. And I will say the social media and this evolution has changed a lot of things in Lebanon. And I feel that this will help us to push many things, you know,
Because it forces
forward.
people and politicians to be transparent.
Exactly. First
Right.
of all, everyone has a voice. People can speak up. In the past, the media used to be controlled, the newspaper or the television, so people can't express their feelings, their anger. Right now, they are expressing it. If somebody is obstructing forming a government that will lead to, affecting the affecting the people's daily life in terms of the economy or what have you, people will speak up, and they are doing so right now. That is different from the past. That's why we see that it's a big deal today.
Right, but do you remember 3 years ago when there was a waste crisis, which is still not yet resolved? There were protests, there were demonstrations, there was social media, we had international highlights. I don't think the politicians really care or hear about what's written on social media. They have an agenda and they still do. You still go by their agenda.
No, here
Well, that's what the young people will say. So
Yeah.
what is your answer to that?
My answer to that is when the voices were raised and when people went down on the streets,
Right.
so people were rushed to find a solution.
There's no solution, though, for the waste crisis still.
Yes, they gave a solution. It is not the right solution.
Okay.
And I was the only one in the cabinet that objected the solution that was agreed upon.
We expect a government formation soon, or you don't see it happening?
No, it will happen. Sooner or later, it's going to happen.
Well, sooner or later. Maybe more later than sooner.
I don't think we will stay without government for a long time.
All right.
People unfortunately are finding loopholes in the law that allows them to procrastinate the formation of a government, and they're using it. I think after that we should look at really our constitution and find out how can we tighten this up so people don't have to suffer all the time if somebody decided they want to block formation of a government.
You happen to be married to a very famous Lebanese singer, Ms. Julia Boutros. So what is the marriage of politics and entertainment like?
It's difficult.
Really? Why?
لأنه she's in the public life.
Right.
And it was difficult for her but she was clear from the beginning. She told me, I will never be the wife of a politician. I will never go with you to those official and boring places.
Oh.
I'm your wife, I'm the mother of your kids. I love you, you love me, but we will not live together this life that you're a politician and I'm his wife.
How do you balance that? And you kind of must have admired her as well, because she's her own person.
I'm her fan before I become her husband.
Yeah.
I see her when she's on stage, I see her as someone who, a fan that loves her.
Yeah.
I watch her like that. So I understand very well how to differentiate between Julia as my wife and Julia, the icon, the star that everybody knows.
And she differentiates between Elias Bou Saab, the politician, and Elias Bou Saab, my husband.
I can't answer for her.
Yeah, but probably. Okay. All right. Because we were laughing about this before, that people will they call you Julia's husband, or is she Elias's wife?
Oh, in many places they call me Julia's husband because she is who she is, and she has been like that before I joined politics, before I became involved in the public life.
You're a family man. You have 2 sons as well.
Yes.
What is the best advice you give to your sons?
To have hope and never give up. An incident happened, and I worked with him on 2 days, and then I proved my point that if you don't give up, you get what you want.
Yeah.
And he did get what he wanted after 2 days. And I asked him, I said, what did you learn from this now after we argued over this for 2 days? He said, I learned not to give up.
Yeah. I know you have a project that you want to start, revolving around the youth, something that would ensure that they are heard. Do you want to just say a few words about that in closing?
Yeah,
And why that's important to you?
It is important because I learned one thing when I was in the cabinet, when I was Minister of Education, that there is no voice for the youth in academic decisions that are taken at the level of the cabinet or the parliament. So I decided that all the salary that I was supposed to get as a minister, I saved it and I put it all in a fund, and we are now about to create this association, the student union, the Lebanese Student Union Association, that will help those students have a say in everything, even if we want to review their curriculum, any decision that we have to take that will affect them at the university level or at the school level.
And this is for the future of the country.
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That firm handshake there. Look, the sun came up just in time for us to go. If you like this episode of Why Chats and want to see more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click, click, click.